Yes, this is Lord Tennyson.
That is Tennyson.
Is this with all these wonderful illustrations?
Yes, that is the one. So he sent the volume as soon as it was published, 1857.
But he had this house, didn't he, on the Isle of Wight?
That's right, that's right. And although he had not yet met Queen Victoria, Prince Albert had visited him, and they had a lovely time together, and Albert said, I will have to introduce you to the Queen. So that's where he's writing from, sending this volume.
How lovely.
And he's, of course, already the poet laureate.
But he was poet laureate for about 40 years, or over 40 years.
Real veteran.
Yes, a real veteran.
The most extraordinary thing about this otherwise rather modest-looking volume is that it was illustrated for the first time for Tennyson's poems. And normally it would have received illustrations in a typically Victorian style, mid-Victorian style, by a number of academicians, not particularly memorable or striking.
I declared, oh, my Lord Arthur, whither shall I go?
Yes.
But he didn't like them.
Well, he didn't like the Pre-Raphaelites. He was suspicious of the very idea of his poems being illustrated. He felt that the artist takes over, and what happens in the reader's imagination is driven by the image rather than the text.
How odd, because you'd thought the two would go side by side. You get a wonderful illustration and a poem, so one complements the other.
Indeed, and his poetry is very visual.
Yeah.
It's very strange. He was like T.S. Eliot. He's one of those poets that were deeply, inherently suspicious of the image. But the publisher, Edward Moxon, who had already published a number of Tennyson editions very successfully, very lucratively, he conceived of this idea of an illustrated edition. And then John Ruskin came into the picture and recommended that the Pre-Raphaelite should be involved. So we have Millet here with Mariana.
That's lovely, isn't it?
And we have a very recognizable Holman Hunt with the Lady of Shalott.
That is the Lady of Shalott. That is so wonderful, isn't it?
It's iconic.
Yeah.
It's iconic.
I mean, you'd think now, he if he came back now, he might be quite pleased.
He may be. He may indeed go and ask them.
Yeah.
And then we have Dante Gabriel Rossetti illustrating the Palace of Art. And this is probably the most unnerving or disturbing image of Saint Cecilia. The passion, the angst, the emotions are very powerful here. And I guess this is what Tennyson could not
appreciate. Just thought it was a bit too much.
It was too much.
Yes.
And in fact, the
for
critics...
Victorian, especially.
For Victorian, exactly. And the critics were not very fond of this edition, mostly because it was disparate. There is the very traditional mid-Victorian style of illustration, which probably would have gone down quite well, but it's not homogeneous. Then this intrusion by the Pre-Raphaelites is seen as very disruptive and yes, taking over from the text. So unfortunately it wasn't
very criticized.
Very criticized. Aesthetically, but also financially, it was not a success.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
It didn't sell.
So sad, isn't it? Something as wonderful and as beautiful as that.
Yeah. And we have this correspondence between Lord Tennyson and John Ruskin after that. Tennyson complaining that it really wasn't such a good idea after all. And he does not appreciate the fact that especially Dante Gabriel Rossetti is so powerful that the text somehow takes...
it's overshadowed everything he was writing.
And that he's beginning to control the reader's imagination. And Ruskin says, but isn't this what reading and looking is about?
Exactly. Did he understand it in the end or not?
I don't think they ever agreed on that. No. And of course, Gustave Duré will come and illustrate the next big run of Tennyson poems, again for Edward Moxon. And that wasn't a success either, and Tennyson wasn't happy with that
Another
either.
flop. Oh dear. It's terrible.
It destroyed
Yes.
Moxon as a publisher.
Yes. So he wasn't able to publish after that at all.
Well, he continued for another 10 years or so,
Yeah,
and
just
then
faded out.
after Doré, the business faded out. It was just unsustainable financially. But it's sad because now we appreciate it as
now we
this
appreciate
enormous
it's absolutely
breakthrough.
wonderful. We
Yes.
can't think what they were talking about then.
Exactly.
It just shows how things change over
Taste
time.
changes.